me. So good evening, everybody. So my name's Stewart Wall. I'm the regional organizer for East Midlands and Central Region. And tonight we've got Jo Court with us, who has recently produced an absolutely marvelous book, a documentary book about a farm and the life of a farm over a year. And she then went on to have an exhibition of the work. I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay, Jo, because what I've done is I've got some pages from the book. So are you looking at the screen with this talk promotion, Jo?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. And just before we start, I'd like to congratulate Jo on gaining her associate. Last week, wasn't it, Jo?
Last week.
Yeah, well done, well done.
Thank you.
And this was the lady who you photographed. Would you tell us a little bit about that, please, Jo? About your experience of gaining your associate and how you just developed your work for that.
Oh, wow. To be honest, I came across this lady when I was photographing the farm.
Yeah.
Her husband's full-time.
Yeah.
She works partly on the farm, partly as a shepherdess. She's a very interesting country woman. So I just asked if I could spend some time with her during the lambing season. I thought it'd be interesting. I didn't have distinctions in mind at the time.
Yeah.
So it was great, actually. She said yes, but then she took a while to let me go.
People do. That's
she had all sorts of excuses, but we had a lovely day, and I think I was actually a little bit helpful. I hope to think I was a little bit helpful as well as just snapping.
Well done. Thank you.
It was a fabulous time. Yeah, she's a wonderful country woman. She has all her own pigs, sheep. She doesn't have chickens anymore because of the rats.
Yeah.
Horses. They grow their own vegetables. They work the land. He's the farm gun. They're just your typical. I don't know. He's retiring, so they're in a tied house. So they will now be moving into their own place in the town. They can't afford to live in the countryside, and that's such a shame, isn't it?
Well, you know what? It is a shame, Jo. And when I first saw your book, I was really drawn to it because I grew up on a little farm, and this was near Chelmsford, and it was an apple farm as well. So when I was looking through your book and I was seeing all those scenes, it was absolutely marvellous. And the farm now is no longer a farm, and I noticed the little cottage that my parents lived in, which they worked. My father worked on the farm, sold just a few years ago for £750,000.
Oh,
just
crazy.
Phenomenal. The changes in property value.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I think I don't know that we'll lose the tradition. I'd hate to say that. I would hope not. Maybe those coming into the tied cottages may continue. Maybe, sometimes those that come from the cities and the towns do pick up the traditional methods and ways as well. So yeah, but they are really they're a family in a million now, I think.
Definitely, very much so. Well done on that. If I can ask everybody who's sort of joining recently, if you can just mute your mics, that would be fabulous, so that we don't hear you sneezing and shuffling in the background. Thank you very much. So let's move on to the book itself. So we're going to talk about the book first, and then we're going to talk about your exhibition. So the book is a hardbacked book. What was your decision there, Jo? Why did you go for hardback over softback?
I did a book last year on my local city in the lockdown. That was my first documentary book, photographic book, and I did it paperback. It was A4. It had quite a nice 250 gram cover maybe, but nevertheless it just wasn't as smart. I wanted to make that one accessible to people. I wanted the price to be that bit cheaper, so it's accessible to many. But this one, I'd spent a whole year or more on this. It was going to be a very special book to those involved and to me, and I just wanted it to be that bit smarter, to be honest, to last a bit longer, to look tidier. Yeah,
a lot of sense, and it really does look very, very tidy. I mean, the book here, I'll just show you the physical book. It's quite thick, and it really is beautiful. And what I'm going to show you tonight is just some pages from that book. It's not that expensive though, Joe. So I'm sure if people are interested, we can give you some details of how to get a copy later on.
Yeah.
Coming back to the project for a moment, Joe, what drew you to create this project?
Okay. Well, I'd have to go back very, very quickly as I can. I need to give you a little bit of history. In that I grew up on a farm also, Stewart, an arable dairy farm on the Essex-Cambridgeshire border, in Epping originally, and then Essex-Cambridgeshire later. My father too was a farm labourer, so we lived in a tied house. I've spent my childhood running the woods and wading in ponds and climbing haystacks, so it's a very comfortable environment for me. I had my first camera when I was about 10, and at the same time began to paint watercolours. And I've always called myself a painter. I was always a fine artist. I came to Canterbury, where I am now, to do a fine art degree, but got rather distracted on arrival. Because I was from this tiny hamlet in the middle of nowhere, I was quite shocked by the addiction and homelessness on my city streets that I found. And I didn't waste my time. According to my tutors, maybe I wasted my time, but I really was not in college, in university very often. I was helping these guys on the street. They were in my home. I was taking them to hostels all over the country. We did a lot of work with them day and night. So eventually I thought, no, I really must get this degree under my belt. So I did it on them just to make it easy. And my university had a very unusual fine art course in that it did a graphic fine art course. It was one of a kind. It's not what you'd think of as graphics, it's not what you'd think of as fine art, but it meant that I could incorporate a lot of photography, a lot of artifacts, letters into my final show and into my work. So my final degree was actually a documentary, a photographic documentary of these people and their lives, their letters, their stories, newspaper clippings, all sorts of things. It was a huge exhibition with artifacts. I got married in the summer before my final year. I was married at the age of 21. And as soon as I graduated, I literally went on to have children. So I had 5 children. And obviously with 5 children, my photography and my painting fell by the wayside for many, many, many years. Except, families, point and shoot cameras. And then in 2018, in the summer, I went on holiday. I'd been working in my local primary school, and I just had enough. My youngest was doing his A-levels, and I just thought we don't need quite the same money now for sport and music, etc. So I spoke to my husband, and I had a lot of encouragement from him and my parents to leave my job at the school and to pick up my art again. Now, I was still calling myself a painter. I kept saying, I'm a painter, I'm going to get my paints out. I sorted out all my paints, made sure I had them all ready, set my room up. And but the first thing I actually did was register on adult education course in photography. I needed to upgrade to digital. I'd only worked film and not very well. I'd never been taught properly, just a few basic manual controls, aperture and shutter speed in those days, and which film to choose. I really didn't understand anything about the working of the camera other than that. So I really needed to upgrade my skills. So I went to adult ed in photography. Coming to the end of the 3rd and final course that they offered, I thought to myself, I really need a project so that I can just be out with my camera regularly, often, get the hang of it, just something to get my teeth into. Still very new. It was December 2018. I'd left in September 2018, done most of the courses. And I just thought I need a project. And my husband said to me, well, why don't you do a fruit farm, Joe? Because you're living in Kent now, the Garden of England. Why don't you go, and you're familiar with farms, why don't you go and do a fruit farm? I know a farmer, I know a farm, and from what I can see, they treat their workers well. It's a good place to be. Why don't you go and ask them? So he drew me a map how to find it up the lanes, gave me the guy's name. And in the middle of December, I walked into the office and asked for Mark Gascoigne. And there was Mark standing in front of me. And I just said to him, "Oh, hello, I'm your window cleaner's wife. And I'm a documentary photographer. And I would love to come and document your farm for a year with my camera. What do you think?" And he just said, "Yes." I couldn't believe it. He just said, "Yes." And then after that, he thought about it a little and he said, "Oh, maybe not the caravans." But no, he had said yes. And on the 2nd of January 2019, I turned up on the farm. That was my first day. So that's a bit long, Stuart, but that's how I came to the farm. And I must say, because I was such a beginner, I'd only literally just got my Nikon 750. I think I had my daughter's 500 before that. I was soon out on the pheasant shoots and things, which was a challenge for me in itself, but that's another story. But when I looked back at the end of the year to start compiling the book, I looked at January, February photos and I thought, oh my goodness, have I got anything I can use?
Well, let's start going through the book.
Yeah, have a look.
But what was really interesting with that bit is that some of this empathy that you've got for people really comes out in the book, and I hope people can see that as we go through the pages. So is this a map of the farm itself, Jo?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, just to explain to everybody, these are actual pages in the book. So this is where I've just snapped some photographs of the pages. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the spread there? Presumably it's the farm is in yellow, is it?
Yeah, the farm's in yellow. Previously it would have been more yellow than that, but over the years they've sold some to housing. Some they own is now they rent out and other people do the soft fruit. Some land over the last few years they've sold to Tattinger Champagne, but they still manage that land. Let's have a look. That land is actually in yellow. So yeah, I just photocopied this myself because they didn't have one at the farm then. They do now, but they didn't at that time. And I went and I took it to Mark and asked him just to highlight all of his land so that I knew where I was going and what I could walk on and what I couldn't, where I could drive and where I must not.
Of course, any sort of documentary project really needs that planning, doesn't it? And it needs mapping out. Obviously, this is a map, but what I mean is it needs mapping out so that when you get lost in the project, you can refer back to that plan. Is that what you were doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I just, it took me a long time before I'd been round the whole farm myself. The manager took me round it in his car in early February of the year, but I couldn't follow where we were going. It's all the farm's private lanes as well as public roads. I didn't really have much of a clue, but he did take me around the whole farm. So for me to actually just either drive or walk and find my way around took a long time, and it took even longer to think, now where are the pears, where are the apples, where are the vines, you know, where's the plums, which plums are they? It took me almost a year.
Yeah. What are these little sort of shapes? They look like a reflector or something, or an eyelash.
Oh, but I've marked some viewpoints.
Okay.
Viewpoints that I thought were particularly pretty.
Yeah.
So
these are quite high up sort of areas, are they?
Yeah.
In the farm? Fabulous. Well, I think that's brilliant. And obviously, this is your notebook. So throughout the project, you were taking notes, I'm guessing.
Yes. Very fast. I had that with me all the time. That's my second one. I went through 2 very quickly. And when I'd get home, if I had time, I would always write the notes up because that was such a scribble. It was such a mess.
Yeah.
I wrote them up if I could every day tidily. Yeah. When I got home.
Yeah. One of our members is a retired police officer, and he writes in capitals. And apparently, that's a trick of the police to write in capitals so that they can read their own writing. I think that's a really good tip. So the contents page, here we can start to see you really starting to map out what you've done. Did you have this right from the beginning? Did you plan these sections at the beginning of your project, or did they just evolve?
I had no plan.
Okay.
My only plan was to go in and document the life on the farm as much as I could, every aspect if I could, if they would let me. And then kind of 4 or 5 months in, I was thinking, oh, I might need to choose an area, and I might need to pick something out and specialize a little bit. But then I thought, no, the whole farm is the whole farm. I really wanted to get the whole thing. So come July, probably August, I had it in my head. I wanted the people, I wanted their portraits, I wanted their stories. I knew that at that point. I knew I'd like some history. I didn't know how if that was going to be possible or not. And I knew all along that I would go chronologically. Once I decided that I wasn't going to pick one element out, I knew that I would go chronologically through the farm. Yeah.
So you let the project evolve with you.
I did, yeah.
I think that's a really good way of doing it, rather than preconceive it and then almost getting tied down to that preconception. So excellent. So this is the farm itself, or starting to look at the farm. So it's quite a complex farm, isn't it, Jo?
In what way?
In as much as it's not just an apple farm.
It's top fruit. So it's apples, pears, plums.
Yep.
As I said, the soft fruit is somebody else runs that. And they manage the vineyards for Taittinger Champagne. Domaine d'Evremond is the English sparkling wine. Yeah.
And as we go through it, we'll see that it's almost an entire business concept. They've got all the storage and the factories and the lorries and all sorts. It's quite amazing. So you mentioned Charles earlier on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Charles, just a bit, just to sort of...
Yeah, he kind of handed over not long before I turned up, and he was still very involved, and he still is. He'll be on the farm if he's not away on holiday. He'll be there a couple of times a week. I first met Charles when I first met the full-time pruners in January, actually, and Charles was pruning alongside them with his dogs. Now, his grandfather and father bought the farm in the 30s, and then he ran it actually from the age of 21. He had to come back. He was called back. He was abroad working in Canada, somewhere very cold with the Eskimos. But he was called back at the age of 21. So he actually took on the farm at the age of 21. He was very young. And he's just handed it over to his son, Mark, in the last 5-6 years or so, but still has quite a large, I don't know, quite, they seem to get on very, very well. It's very amicable. I'm sure they talk things through. And I'm sure Charles has been very wise, having taken it on himself and knows what it's like. That kind of father-son, son wants to do this, but father, oh, we've never done it like that before. I never sensed that between them. They get on very well.
Yeah, well, farming has certainly changed over the last 10 or 20 years, hasn't it? Where with robotics and artificial intelligence and all sorts of things, absolutely amazing. Yeah. So you cover the history of the farm in quite complex detail. Was that all based on interviews, or did they give you some?
Oh, actually, that's Charles. Charles has written that for me.
Brilliant.
Took him a while, but we got there. And his wife is an artist. She's a sculptor. So she's been out with her camera. Not that one, obviously. That's before her time. But she's been out with her camera. So some of the pictures were hers. So it was very kind of her to let me go through those and pick some out. So yeah, Charles wrote that.
Fabulous. Yeah. And this really comes out in the book, that you haven't just gone and taken a few photographs. You've kind of almost lived this family and this farm and the workers.
Yeah, I did feel very much part of the community, and very quickly, I was very surprised. It took me probably a couple of months before I'd met all the full-time workers. And it was my first project of this kind. So I was quite shy to ask them things about themselves at the beginning. I wasn't shy to take photographs. They knew that's what I was there for. But I felt a little bit awkward asking them questions. And I actually didn't do the full-time worker interviews until early 2020, when I'd spent a whole year getting to know them. And then I went in and I'd warned them at the end of 2019 that I'd be back in the new year to do their interviews, and could they give it a little bit of thought. And then I went and I literally interviewed them then. Mark Gascoigne he was so hard to pin down. I didn't interview him until this year. Literally, I can't remember when, July, June this year. So and even then, I don't know, I think in hindsight, I would have asked questions sooner, because they knew what I was there for, and I was just being a bit shy. I could have been more upfront a little bit sooner, maybe not straight away. So when I did interview them, they would share things, and some of the things they shared were really quite personal. And I had to stop them and say, would you like that to go in the book? And sometimes they would say, oh, actually, no, Jo, that was just for you, because we'd built up relationships. So I had to check that quite regularly. Is that okay to go in the book?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Jo, no. Or yes, Jo, that's fine, you know, because they got used to sharing.
There was that sort of element of suspicion when you first started doing the project, presumably. Why are you taking these photographs? Why are you?
Yeah, a little bit. One guy, literally in January, he was the first person I photographed in his tractor. And at the end of January, he said, that's enough. I'd only taken about 3 photographs. He said, you're going to have more photographs than my wife has got. He said, he's a little bit autistic, lovely guy, Romanian chap. He said, that's enough, no more. So I couldn't photograph him for the rest of the year, which was a real nuisance, because he was the only one that dug out the irrigation.
Oh, right, okay.
So I haven't really got very much of that in the book at all. And then in 2020, I went to him and I said, now, Michael, I'm putting this book together and you're not in it.
Right.
He said, that's fine. I said, it isn't fine, Michael. It really isn't fine. You are part of Gascoigne's Farm 2019 and you need to be in the book. He said, oh, I'm only a small part. I said, every little part counts. I need you in the book. And then he let me take his portraits and he answered my questions, and he was fine, because he knew that I wasn't going to be slapping him all year long.
Yeah.
It was just at the end.
So let's go through a few of these pages, and what you've come out with already, which is really interesting, is you said you felt part of the community. And here we've got you starting to interview people saying, what would you like me to write? So really you were looking for their story rather than you just photographing the story. Would you say that's correct? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted their story.
Yeah, and of course this is what we're talking about a lot at the moment in photography, where we're looking at community photography, which emerged in the 70s. So it's really interesting that you kind of developed that belonging to the people that you were photographing. I think that's a really important aspect. So introducing the full-time workers, you've just told us this was something you did towards the end, but you kind of put it in almost towards the beginning of the book. Would you say that's fair? And
yeah, I think for me, there were so many aspects of the farm, as you'll see later on, the new technologies and even the landscapes, I think of the wildlife, there are lots of aspects. And but I really felt that the people, you can't have a farm without the people, full-time people in particular, and the migrant pickers, they're just as important. So I just felt that to introduce the farm, it needed the people right at the beginning. Yeah.
What comes over is, although there are workers who aren't full-time, that they come in when they're needed, the people have been there for years, such as this lady here, Vasilina Vessi, who's been working there for 18 years and originally came over from Bulgaria.
So they come over as pickers when they're young, and some of them are just offered work to stay. Sometimes they come in obviously in the harvest time, in the summer and the autumn, so they'll be here. Well, they're thin in June, the bulk will turn up July, August time, August for the plum picking. So August, September, they're here 3 to 4 months for the harvest. And then some of them return again in the new year. Before it used to be to construct the polytunnels for the soft fruit. Now it's to prune the grapes, the vines. So if they're good, they'll get picked up. I mean, you've got people here that are highly qualified, back home in various things, vets, also, you know, all people with degrees, and they're coming over here to work for a better life, more money. So Vessie came over when she was younger. She stayed here 18 years. She has a family. Yeah, she works full time in the office.
I can remember this when I was young, and I mean, I'm going back to the 70s now, and each harvest time, a group of they were mainly women, but they would suddenly arrive, and they were all local. They were all from the Little Meadow area. Did you find there were people from the locality rather than people who'd sort of come from Eastern Europe?
Well, obviously, what's happened partly, the women used to do the picking, or they used to send buses out to the local area for the harvest.
Yeah.
But the end of cash in hand pay, and also health and safety, it meant that the children could no longer be brought along. So it kind of just finished. That just, they had to find an alternative, and that's when government brought in the SOARS program, seasonal agricultural workers.
Right.
That's when the Eastern Europeans began to come over, because the laws just changed here. So it's a shame. I mean, I still meet people now in Canterbury and in this area, obviously through my exhibition and through this project, and they say to me, oh, my mum worked on the farm, my gran worked on the farm for harvest, you know, I remember being a child and being on the farm. And there are some full-time pruners and workers on the farm whose parents and aunties did work on the farm. They did do the picking, and they were in the pack houses, and they're still there now. You know, their children are now full-time on the farm. That's, some of them, they've really not left the farm. They've been there all their lives. Not many, but there's one particular family and a few others that have had a little bit of coming and going, but they have spent the majority of their adulthood on the farm. Maybe their parents worked on the farm and they visited as kids. So there are some local people still there, but they are full-time workers. You don't get any local people coming for the harvest.
Let's look through a few of them. We've got Jason here. What was Jason's story?
Jason's father worked on the farm. He's part of the big family that's still present on the farm, the Streetfield family. His father was the longest serving to date. Nearly did 40 years.
Oh wow.
Charles said to me he knows he did 39 years because he'd always said to Brian, Jason's father, if you do 40 years, I'll give you a gold watch. And he didn't quite make it. He did 39, but Charles gave him his gold watch anyway. So Charles remembers that very well. The people on the farm, the family, actually tell me that the uncle did 40 years, but he didn't do 39.
No. Oh, wow.
But anyway, no, so Jason grew up on the farm, really, as a child. As a teenager, he'd be walking his dog, he'd be mowing the grass, be out visiting his dad after school. He left for a while. He's done a little bit of work in various, as a gardener, as a groundsman, as a manager of a hotel. And then he came back when things slowed down for him there, came back and asked for some pruning. And now he's the manager. He's the farm manager.
And these stories really come out in the book, so I think you've really covered them well. We've already spoken about Yvonne, and you know, if anybody gets a chance to look at your distinction panel, I think it's well worth it, because you really covered her day very, very well, didn't you? You had the lambing and all sorts. It was excellent. So well done on that. And here we've got some full-time fruitmen. This guy here, it looks as if he comes from abroad originally, does he? Or
yeah. Mirek, he's from Poland.
Yep.
Great guy. Again, he's been here 11 years. His family are here. He has no intention of returning. He's very happy here. His English is 75%. It's quite good. And he's great. Yeah.
And beautiful photography. Talk us through your photography process just a little bit. I mean, this image on the right here just is gorgeous. You've got this statuesque worker, very proud with his equipment, and then you've got this beautiful composition just zooming off into the background. Is that something you purposely set out to do? You were thinking about what was in your viewfinder as you were taking these photographs?
Yeah. I think when I decided that I would do portraits and their stories. I really can't remember when. It must be May, June time, kind of time. Mind you, looking at him, it's earlier than that, isn't it? The trees haven't even. So it must have been quite early on.
Yeah.
So I did go out and start to shoot some portraits. So I would do a close-up horizontal and a 3/4 length and a full length. I let them stand themselves. I would maybe roughly say, could you stand here? I wanted to show the line of trees and I wanted it to go away, the perspective to drop away in the distance. So I wanted that, I saw that, but I would never pose them as people, their bodies, their arms or legs or anything. If they've stood proud, that's the way they've chosen to stand. They all choose their own stance. Some are holding their bits and, some look shy, some.
Yeah, I mean, this shot on the right, I think has a really strong narrative within the individual image. I'm getting this impression of this guy who's using these hand tools to prune these trees, and the way you've got this just disappearing. It's a heck of a job that he's
he's been pruning a lot of trees. Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm suggesting, that that there's the way you've composed these images, and I don't know whether that comes from your experience as a painter, or whether you've been developing that as a photographer.
Bit of both, mate. I found that straight away on my adult ed, my composition was always, I don't like to sound proud, but I think it was always good. I've been a painter most of my life, so composition was good.
Was that an assessed course, by the way, the NCFE course or anything like that?
No, it was just an local adult education course.
Just fun to do. Brilliant.
Didn't get any qualification.
No. And as the pages go through, how many workers were there on the farm, would you say?
Full time, oh gosh, can I remember? About 20 something, 24 maybe, 27. Okay. And then obviously in harvest you'd be well over 100, 150. Yeah,
brilliant. And there's certainly a lot of them you've photographed. So let's just talk about these.
I photographed all the full-time workers. They're all present. Brilliant. In the book. Yeah.
Well done. So let's talk about the months, because you said earlier that you grew up on a farm, you lived on a farm, and you really get this feel for the seasons then, don't you? And is that what you were sort of feeling as you went back week in, week out to the farm here? So you were starting to understand how the farm survived throughout the year and how they changed.
Yeah. I mean, that was educational to me. I've never been. I had no knowledge of fruit farming at all. Obviously, this was the only day in 2019 that there was any type of snow in the southeast of England. We don't get a lot unless it comes from the east. So I shot up there pretty quick. First thing in the morning. How can I get a snow before it disappears? And I just thought it was I knew then that this would be one of my opening images. So I knew that I wanted the photograph of the farm sign in the snow, because I was going to start in January, which is winter. So I shot up there to get a few photographs. This one very much so. Planned.
So you didn't know anything about the workings of a fruit farm. So how did you develop your knowledge of all the different tasks they have to do? You've got them listed here: root, prune, fruitman, prune, spray exams. Where does that knowledge come from?
Wandered around, got to talk to people, got on the manager's nerves, asking him lots of questions, and then he would talk to me in gobbledygook farming language, and I would say, I'm really sorry, Jason, you're going to have to go through that all over again. What on earth does that mean, and what does that mean? Literally just spending time with people. When they're pruning, I would be with them. I mean, I spent hours with them. I would give them lifts in the car. I was up there all day, 3 days a week, sometimes not always doing this farm project. Sometimes I would just rest at my favourite pond and watch the heron, or I would just enjoy being up there first thing and watching the sunrise. I need to be outside in the countryside. It's part of what I need. I shrivel up otherwise. So, but I did spend a lot of time with the guys, just talking to them. That most of them can answer as they're working. I just learned as I went along.
Yeah, brilliant. So is that great?
And afterwards, to be honest, again, I was quite shy and I didn't clarify as much as I should have done. I felt like I was getting on their nerves because they're trying to work.
Yeah.
And I'm coming. Some of them can talk. If they're pruning, they can talk. But sometimes just felt like I didn't want to be a nuisance. I wanted to be a fly on the wall. I didn't want them to get fed up with me. And I was very aware of that, especially at the beginning. I didn't want any of them to get fed up with me. And I was a bit shy. So the combination of that meant actually that towards the end of the year and even into 2020 and 21, I'm going back to the farmer, and now I'm really getting on his nerves because, Mark, please, what does this mean? Why were you doing this? And I then had to clarify everything. So in hindsight, I shouldn't have felt so bad about it at the beginning. I should have done it while I was there.
I think it's important to clarify it, because you know what's in this book now becomes a documentary record, and you don't want to mislead people.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So you know, brilliant, well done.
Yeah.
So we can really see the seasons now. We've got these pruners paid per tree in the winter. So it's what do they call that? There's a name for it, isn't there?
That escapes me too. I expect they said in it.
Yeah. So literally, how many trees have you pruned, and that's how much they get paid.
But once they've kind of done their quota, they can work hard, and then they can go home and warm up.
Right.
It's to enable them to go home earlier in the day. So that's actually what it's for. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Piecework.
Piecework. That's correct, Mazane. Thank you.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, well done.
Spot on. That was the one. Yeah.
That's it.
And here we've got the clearing up, have we? So this is still at the start of the year.
That's scrubbing a field. So it's been an old orchard. Trees will only last 15 years, 20 years maybe. So they don't yield enough. So then this guy, Dave, comes along. The farm workers would chainsaw it all down to stumps, and he'll come along with his digger and dig it all up and burn it all. And then they put a green crop on it. And then they construct a new orchard. So that, I mean, I was fortunate really in that I must have seen 6 or 7 new fields go in, which is very unusual for a year. In 2020, I don't think they had any. 21, they've had a couple. So yeah, that was good. It's good for me. Yeah. So he's contracted. He's not a full-time worker. They call him in when they need him with his machinery. Causes a stink with the locals. The locals don't like losing their old trees.
No, I bet. How did you discover when things were happening? Does that make sense? So
sometimes the manager was excellent, and I would often jump in his car, and just because he would go around visiting the workers, or I would message him in the morning and say, anything going on today, Jason? I'm free, I can come up. And he would say to me, the pruners are on such and such a field, they're constructing on this field, this is happening on this field. Well, he wasn't normally that precise. He thought I would know what he meant. So I often had to hassle him and say, where's that field? Or, you know, what one's that kind of thing. But he was excellent. And then when I did jump in his car, I would ask him lots of questions. And he would say to me, Joe, in July, the new vines are going to go in. Be great if you were here for that. So he gave me, and I would write it in my diary as soon as I got home. So he was brilliant, to be honest. He was superb.
It was about developing that relationship. Developing that relationship.
And I never felt like I was hassling him. No. Well, I didn't feel like I was hassling anyone, actually, to be honest. That was just me being a bit shy at the beginning. Yeah.
Did you show them the work as you were creating it? So
not really. At the end of January, I showed Mark Gascoigne my favourite images from January.
Yeah.
Just so he could see what I was doing. Okay. He was pleased with them. After that, I didn't even edit the images every month. Life was busy for me at home, still with, you know, a couple of grown-up children here, and I didn't even go through all the images after each shoot. I just filed them away in my hard drive, you know, so in my external drive. So yeah.
Any idea how many photographs you did take? Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. Thousands probably.
Right.
Thousands. But again, like I say, some of them were just the pond in different seasons. They're not in the book.
Yep.
Some of them were just me having a nice time. Of the actual farm, probably still, probably, I don't know. I really don't know, thousands. Yeah. I mean, I was careful. I didn't just snap, 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 but I did take a lot of photographs.
Here we've moved inside, so we've moved into the factory kind of complex. Is this on the farm as well?
It isn't actually. That one isn't. I had to do quite a long drive for that. They no longer pack most of their fruit on the farm. They pack the plums on the farm.
Okay.
Everything else is put in lorries and driven an hour away, because they wanted some huge new packing stores. So it's very expensive for one farm to put up a whole new packing shed and cold storage. So he went in with a business partner, and it was built on the business partner's farm.
Did
So I had to go down there especially.
Did that create a new set of problems for you gaining permission? And
yeah, again, the guys on the farm were so helpful. Mark called the manager of the pack house and said about what I was doing. He said, no, I think he just asked if he could give me the guy's number, and I liaised with him directly. The pack house manager was quite hesitant. He didn't know me at all, and he stayed with me the whole time, because obviously you cannot. You have to use one of their pens. You can't just take your own pen because your lid might fall in the packaging. There's lots of things like that. So he needed to make sure that I understood and that I did everything properly, and that I wasn't going to be a liability and get in the way of the machinery and things like that. Mark afterwards, when Mark asked me how it had gone, he said, "Oh, Jo, I'm sorry." He said, I know that you would have been fine. I'm happy for you to go up and wander around by yourself, because it's restrictive for me to have the manager with me. The photographing was restrictive, but it was fine. It was fine.
did you get model release forms or?
Yes, I did. I had model release forms for obviously Mark and Charles, all the full-time workers, any worker that was predominant in a photograph. So the seasonal migrant workers, when there's over 100 of them and they're in a crowd, then no, I didn't have everybody's. But if they were prominent, the main subject in the photograph, if I didn't have their permission, I would go to the office and ask if they could chase them, which I was doing a lot of earlier this year. Because again, when they're working, it's not, they've given me verbal permission. They've all given me verbal permission. I've spoken through the field supervisors who have translated into everyone's languages. They all know what I'm doing, and they've all had an opportunity to come to me and say, not me, which nobody did. So I've had verbal permission, but I wasn't happy just to have verbal permission if they were predominant in the image. So some images did actually get scrapped. I really wanted them in the book, and not many, but I couldn't use them, couldn't chase the people, and I didn't want to risk it.
I think that's really sensible. I mean, when you're doing a book and an exhibition, the last thing you want is somebody coming up to you and saying, I don't want my picture in that book.
No, I mean, they gave me verbal permission, but I'd had a problem with the lockdown book that I did, in that somebody gave me verbal permission, stood, had a conversation with me, looked straight into the ball of my lens while I took the photograph. And then when they saw it in the book, her boyfriend or whatever, it's obviously a bit of a case, and thought he could get some money out of me, despite all of that. So I just wanted to cover my back, really.
Very sensible.
Yeah.
So we're now seeing a briefing, Mark and Jason briefing the team. And it's quite interesting, you've got this little logo on there just explaining that to us. How did that come about, Jo?
What, the little piece of writing?
Yeah.
Well, I popped it there because Mark was writing in the dirt.
Okay.
He was obviously drawing something, explaining something in the dirt on the ground. So I popped it down there just to try and bring that part of the story out, because obviously the photograph doesn't quite show it. His hand is there, but he could be doing maybe one or two other things as well. So I thought if I put the quote there, it would just maybe speak it a little bit more. Maybe it doesn't. Basically, I took the photograph at the wrong time.
I personally think it adds to the narrative. I know some people feel that you shouldn't put text on photographs, but I think these.
Oh, I like text on photographs.
Yeah, this is more than photographs. So we'll just skip through some of the pages now, so that we can come on to the exhibition. But as we go through them, you'll see how Jo has really captured all of the life, really, the social life, the working life. We've now got these tractors which are beautifully kept. There's some really interesting heavyweight stuff here. And is this in their social quarters, Joe? Is this where?
Yeah, that's their rest room. Yeah, looking out into the yard.
Fabulous, fabulous. More of the hardware. And then we come through to the later seasons. And I think these little pictures are really beautiful, where you've just captured the blossom. We can start to feel the whole atmosphere of the place as the colours come out, and the tree lopping. Really, really amazing stuff. And then we're talking about wine, and we all like to talk about wine. Do they grow a lot of fruit for wine, Joe?
They do now. They do. They Tattinger own a lot of the south-facing hillsides now. There's a lot of vineyards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge business. I mean, there won't be any wine for another 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Won't be ready until then. They're just building a visitor centre at the moment, or trying to.
Yeah. Do we eat more fruit or drink more wine? That's interesting. Yeah. This is absolutely beautiful. And then here we've got this fabulous shot here. Looks like the rainforest, but I'm guessing it's chucking it down with rain, is it, Joe?
Well, your photographs, I don't know, maybe it's the way I'm looking at them, but the colours are very light. Oh, hang on, maybe that's a bit better. But this was fabulous because it had been raining so much and they hadn't been able to go out and spray, and they were worried about scab. Once you get scab, you've lost your apple harvest. So the only opportunity when it actually isn't raining, when it wasn't raining, to go and spray was at night time. So some of the full-time workers went out, they worked all day, and then they went back out at 6 in the evening, and they worked till midnight. No, midnight it took them bacon rolls. So they must have worked till about 3. And then they went home and had a little bit of sleep. I know they had a little bit of sleep, and then they worked again the following day. It was the only way to get spraying in because there was more rain forecast. Again, the manager messaged me and said, Joe, tonight we're going to be out late. This is in June and it's dark. I mean, I was there at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night time to get these images of them spraying like an emergency spray. Yeah.
I mean, that just looks like an amazing image. It really does. And
I hold my breath when they come at me.
I bet you do. I bet you do. I bet you do. Is this the guy who said no more photographs, by the way?
No, it's not. No, he's a lovely chap. He had polio as a child. He's got a problem with his leg.
Right, okay.
Yeah, nice guy from Lithuania.
Yeah. Brilliant. You've really captured all these different moments in the life of the farm. And then we come up to the actual harvest itself. The field supervisors, Milena. Was it Melina?
Milena.
Yeah, Milena. Yeah. 6 seasons. And then we've got this coach, and presumably this coach is owned by the farm, is it?
Yes, yeah.
And this is how they move the workers around the fields, or?
Yeah, that's how they move them around. I mean, the farm is large, but they can't normally walk to a field. And it would normally, well, depending upon the amount of fruit, obviously that varies year to year, but they would often have to run 2 buses. The one crowd would have to wait for the bus to come, take one lot back to the vans and return, and then pick them up. See, this lot had waited while a whole busload had already been taken back to their caravans, and then it had to return to pick them up. They are exhausted. They'd worked from 5 in the morning, and it's now probably 4:30 in the afternoon, trying to get the plum harvest in again before the rain.
Right, here we go. Yeah. In the sunset, there really were some beautiful scenes. This is from one of those high up locations.
Yes, yeah.
Beautiful. Just flick through these pages, and guys, this is just a small selection really of the pages in the book. It's just an amazing book where you've covered a lot of things. And then we come to this final shot there. We are happy and would like to return. Presumably that's got connotations about Brexit, has it, Joe? Yeah.
In the summer, I decided I'd really like to do some migrant quotes and put them in the environment. I actually did that for my degree show for the homeless and the addicts. So for my final show, I typed up their quotes printed them on photographic paper in the darkroom and then stuck them in their environments on the park bench, in their squats and in their flats and places without any people present, to bring, you know, and I just decided I'd like to do that again. So I was going around with these folded up pieces of paper and blue tack. The final image of the book was going to be the one of the vans with the wall, and it says, I can't remember what it says. What does it say? We have no choice, or so. It's the way it is, or something. We need the money.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at it as I was getting to the end of doing the book, and I thought, why have I got that image there? It's the way it is. We need the money. Let me just check that. And I thought, the way it is, we need the money. And I wrote the quotes as they spoken to me. So in their broken English, I purposely did it like that. Yeah. And I thought, but why have I got this kind of rather negative quote at the end? Because the whole experience and the whole community is not negative at all. And I was leaving the viewer with a negative feel. And I was asking myself, I had it there for a long time. I left it in that place for a long time in my draft. But I kept asking myself, Joanne, why have you done that? And I thought it's because it was punchy. It added a little, it was a bit like being a bad reporter, you know, and you're out for a bit of gossip. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I thought, oh, I don't like that. You know, I don't like that. And actually then the Mark saw it and he said, Jo, does it need to have that one at the end? And I said to him, no, it really doesn't, Mark. It really doesn't. It doesn't sum up your farm. And that's when I swapped it over. Yeah.
Over in the book, Jo, it really does. The book is a very kind book. It's a very comprehensive book. It really tells the story of the farm. And this one just places it in our time. So there is this little link to current political issues.
Yes.
But overall, I think it's a really kind documentary record of a year in this farm. So it really is a beautiful book that you've created. So well done. You asked me to put a little bit in the end there, and I just was really impressed with the whole thing, really. It's this bit that I'm quite interested in, where part of my research is how photographers design photographic representations of social communities. And I think you've designed this project absolutely superbly. Well done. Thank you. Yeah. And then you went on and held an exhibition. And I think I recognise those frames in the background, so well done. But
yes, I wondered if they were the same as yours. Were they the same as what you did for your forge?
They absolutely are.
Yeah, I went to the range, and you said to me to go to the range, and I fell in love with these frames because they don't need a border. They don't need messing around with mounts.
No.
They've got that gold edge, and they were just lovely. I didn't just use those. I had a few other types, but generally the story was on those.
Yeah, we'll see that in a moment. It is just to explain to everybody. I part of my business, we used to make picture frames. We used to make 120 by 16 picture frames a week. When I came to do an exhibition of my associate project, I was going to make the picture frames again, but I'd sold all the equipment. We had quite big equipment to make them, and I wandered into the range and saw this moulding, and I just thought it was gorgeous, and it was so cost effective. I mean, I've still got the moulding that I originally bought to make the picture frames. I think, is this 28 by 16 inches or something? Is that the size of that?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. That's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
I've got it in a pad somewhere written down.
Yeah.
28 by, what did you say? 28 by 20.
28 by 16, was it?
There was a 20. No, they were 4:5 ratio. I think.
Gotcha.
I think there was a 20 by 16, a 16 by 12, and then a 20 by whatever that would have been, 26, 28. Yeah.
But fully recommend their picture frames, and they're beautifully well made. So this lady here, Victoria Prentice, do you want to tell us about the story?
Well, what happened was I did my. It was so much work, so much more work than I'd ever imagined. Compiling this book. Last autumn, I was saying to the farmer, yeah, I'll have it done for Christmas. You can hand them out for Christmas presents. Oh, I was up till midnight. That was last winter. And I didn't send them to the printers until September this year. So I think I've designed 6 books and 6 exhibitions in my head and on paper to get
Yeah.
to the one. That's just through my lack of experience. But it was a lot of work. Now, what happened was we were setting up the exhibition in the farm that is, in the town that is closest to the farm. It's one train stop. And I purposefully did it in the autumn so that the migrant workers would have an opportunity to come and visit it while they were in the country. And I was setting it, I was, putting the exhibition up with the chappie, and a lady came up from downstairs to use the bathroom. She was doing an art class downstairs, and she was just wowed by my exhibition. And she said, I've been in this industry all my life. I write for the Fruit Grower magazine. She was in her 60s. She said to me, I've never seen anything so comprehensive as this. All we ever see are pretty pictures of baskets of apples and pretty orchards. We never see the nitty-gritty and the real life. She said, this is brilliant. Can I buy a book? She was the first person to buy a book. Now, she was also on the National Fruit Show Committee. And she got me a spot. Literally, I took down the exhibition. It was up for 2 weeks. I took it down on the Sunday, and on the Tuesday, I was setting it up at the National Fruit Show, which thankfully is in Kent. So it wasn't far to go. She got me a free space. My space was worth £350. I didn't pay a penny for it, and no commission on any sales. And she just said, have a presence here, sell your books. You're brilliant. And actually, in the December-ish edition of the Fruit Growers magazine, she's just sent an article off for that as well. And then, of course, it's the National Fruit Show. So Victoria Prentice, Minister for Agriculture and Food. I don't have any. When I'm doing a documentary piece of work, you can't completely be neutral. You can't. You're a person. But like I said about the pheasant shoot earlier, and I'm not going to give you my opinion on pheasant shooting. Okay, that's not important. What was important for me was that I was there documenting what was happening. And now, obviously, she's here. I'm not going to tell you my political way and what I think about her or anything like that. But to have her go away with one of my books, I just thought was excellent, because she'll read that. You never know. It might influence her a little bit in one way or the other, hopefully for good in some measure. But it was just wonderful to think that had gone into the hands of the Minister for Agriculture at the National Fruit Show. Yeah, it was fabulous. I was very pleased to meet her. She's from her father is a farmer, so she does know a little bit about farming.
So let's go back to the, that's a great story. Let's go back to the exhibition in the town, the one stop away from the farm. Yeah. I don't know whether this is going to play. I've picked it up from your.
Oh yeah.
So it's yeah. Sorry if it's a little bit juddery. It's not part of Zoom. We're just walking around the show. Yeah. This is a big cafe area, is it, Jo?
Yes, it's a large cafe area.
Yeah, which I think is always a great place to have an exhibition, because you've got a footfall already.
Yeah, it's very popular. People come from the area to go there. For the food is good, the exhibitions are good. It's a good venue to have, good size, quite expensive.
How many have you got on the wall, Jo?
You suggested, well, originally, everybody, I had these old frames from when Debenhams closed. I brought a whole bulk of frames in 2019, and I was determined to use them for this exhibition, you see. And I showed Stewart my plan, and it had about, oh gosh, I don't know, Stewart, 60 odd images. Stewart was like, no, come on, Jo, you're just, it's too much. It's too much for people to take in. So he said, just have 13. But Stewart, I confess, I think I've got about 28 to 30 photographs up on the wall, just to give enough of the different aspects. Yeah.
I mean, they look amazing. And is this the building that they were in?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's on the creek in Faversham.
Yeah,
Kent.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And presumably the conversations that you had there made it all worthwhile.
At the exhibition?
Yeah.
It was good. I met some interesting people. The private view was fabulous, a real buzz at the private view. Lots of the workers came. Obviously, the farmer came, families came, my friends and family came. That was great. I got a really good feedback from it, and obviously then the national show as well, where I met even more interesting people. No, people were asking me, would you how much would you charge me for doing a book and a project like this? And I looked at them and I said, well, honestly, it would run, if I had to actually think about the amount of hours I had spent on that book, you're talking thousands of pounds. I would have to really, I'm not wanting to do it again, I don't think. No. Not a fruit farm. So I wasn't at the National Fruit Show to say to other farmers, yes, I'll do this for you. I just, no, I'm on to something else now. Yeah.
It is a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, obviously, the Magnum photographers would get to spend a year on a project like this, but then they'd be financed by.
That's right. I'm not financed, and the farmer can't afford thousands of pounds to have a book made.
No, you do a little bit in the local newspapers, I see, which is
nice. Yeah. I've done. I sent some off. The first time when I was still doing my adult ed courses, I sent some in of the Children's Climate Change March, and they used them. They used lots amongst their own photographer, but they didn't credit me. And for a year or so, I refused to send anything else. And then in 2020, during the lockdown, I thought, what am I doing with all these images in my external hard drive? Like, I want to do something with my photography, but what photography do I enjoy? I really enjoy press photography. I really enjoy photojournalism. I really enjoy documentary. So I contacted the paper again. I sent them some images of my lockdown images of the city, and they absolutely loved them. They really apologised for not crediting me before. And ever since then, I send stuff in, they use it, they credit me well, they put links to my pages, and they've been great. They don't pay me. Again, freelancers, they have no money. They don't even have their own photographer anymore. You know what newspapers are like, local newspapers winding down, not a lot of money. But they do sometimes call me and say, Jo, are you free? Could you go and shoot this for us? And I love doing that. I love doing that work. Yeah.
It devastates me because, of course, that's my background, and I started on the Brentford Gazette in 1978. There was 11 other photographers working in the newspapers. We had a really good team. After 8 years, I did move into self-employment, and I carried on freelancing for the newspapers. They only paid £10 a job, but you know what? In my first month, they gave me 160 jobs. So there is the budget there. There was the budget, but of course, it's all down to advertising and the loss of.
Yeah, that's right.
So guys, this is the last slide, and we're going to move on to any questions in a moment. But if you do want a copy of Jo's book, it's on Etsy, Jo?
Yeah, on my Etsy. If you just put in Jo Court or Joanne Court, maybe. Oh no, look, there it is. Look, Jo Court Photography. Put that in, and it will pop up. Yeah. And the quality of the images obviously isn't what we've been seeing tonight, is it, Stuart? I mean, they are. I was really pleased with the printing. The quality, the colour, and the depth is superb in the printing.
The quality is fabulous. Absolutely superb. There's some beautiful pictures in there. They really were just snaps of your pages from the book that I've been showing tonight. And of course, it's over Zoom as well. So you'll be really impressed if you order a copy of the book. And when I ordered a copy, I think it took about 3 days to arrive. So it's very.
Yeah, I can't promise it would be that quick. Our postage here was still very slow.
Yep, got you. Okay. Lovely. So Jo, that has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Really been interesting getting into the actual story of producing it. And what I'm now going to do is invite anybody who's got any questions just to unmute and ask Jo. So has anybody got any questions for Jo?
It's Ian here, Jo. Which printer did you use
for the book?
Yeah,
I used oh gosh, I've used 2 in the past. Which one did I use? Flex Press. I think they're a new company. They're based in Leicester. I was very impressed with them. Reasonably priced. More expensive.
What was it again?
Flex.
What was the name? Press. Oh, Flex Press, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Flex. Yeah. Very good.
Okay, thanks.
Lovely, interesting question. Niles, have you you've just unmuted? Have you got a question for Jo? Giles Penfold?
Oh, sorry, Miles. Not really a question. Just I suppose, a comment to say congratulations. I think it's extraordinary. I really do. What I particularly enjoy about it is, and this, I don't want this to sound derogatory, but it's ordinary.
Yeah.
It's about ordinary people doing their everyday life and their everyday jobs, and something that which we don't know about. And in that ordinariness, there is a beauty and an extraordinary story to be told, and I think it's fantastic. I really do. I think it's particularly relevant and pertinent to kind of a whole heap of different things, but certainly it's kind of our political and social landscape at the moment.
Yeah.
And how you've just remarkably captured that. So I should definitely get the book, and it'd be nice to talk to you in the following weeks and that about your work, because I think it's extraordinary. Really do.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
Oh.
I mean, I did. I wasn't there politically, but obviously, whilst I was there, I was very much aware of Brexit and things that were going on. But I still just wanted to capture the essence of the farm, and I think that I just by fluke, I really did choose a good time to do it, didn't I? And the interview with the farmer, again, as I said, that was done in July this year. That's fairly current. He does talk about Brexit and coronavirus, and yeah.
I just think there's one shot in particular which really resonated with me. It's a picture of the farm workers, the fruit pickers rather, waiting to go back to their accommodation, and just the way you've captured that, the beauty of that image, and the empathy that you clearly have with those people. I think it's absolutely so important, because what it does, it removes this anonymous nature of the fruit pickers, those people, them, and actually it shows them for the real people that they are. And I think that's I think I agree with you in terms of the political thing. I'm not a very political animal, but just that thing of you showing them as, you know, these really hard-working people is extraordinary. I'll shut up now, but it's.
Thank you, Giles. I'm really pleased that you've got that from it, Giles, because I think that's really what I love to do. I just love people, and I love to get to know people. And I think through my work, I really want to show that we're all people. I just want to show humanity, and I want to show it in everyday life. I think that is really the heart of all my photography, really. Yeah.
That's Jojo. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So that was a great Comment, Giles. Thank you very much. And if anybody sat in the audience thinking, I kind of recognise that Giles, who is he? Giles came and did a talk for East Midlands 2 or 3 years ago, was it, Giles, now? And a great documentary photographer. And if you go onto Vimeo and just put Giles Pen Found into the search, you'll see some of Giles' images from the effects of war. So thank you, Giles. Janie, you've got your hand up. You were on the actual assessment panel for Joe's associate.
I just want to say congratulations. It was just a great set of work. I've got a couple of questions, and I just also want to say this is just absolutely fascinating, the images you've shown us this evening. And just such a fantastic example of how important it is to really embed in whatever project it is that you're doing. I think the images really show that. But one question I do have is, you mentioned about people sort of saying, "Oh, I don't want you to take my photo anymore," or, you know, slightly feeling that they were saying going away. Did you find it harder as you progressed into the project, or easier, or up and down?
Easier, because I only had 2 people who didn't want their photograph taken. The one I've mentioned, and a lady in the office. They were both extremely friendly. I built wonderful relationships with them. Everybody else, the majority of people are jumping to be in the photographs. I have to take their typical snapshot and send it to them over Messenger just to keep them happy. You know, they're not in the book, so that they can then get on with their work, and I can capture the real images. And most of the time, they didn't even notice my camera click, my shutter go. They got so familiar with me just being there. I could be talking to them and looking for that moment at the same time. I'd snap, but they would hardly even notice. They would hardly notice. So no, it was fine. And I got braver and bolder as I made those relationships. And as I said, I went in 2020 and got those 2 people. Both of them agreed at the end. They realised that it was a book of the whole farm and all the workers, and they didn't want to be missing from it. So they were happy to go in. I did have to send them to the lady in the office. I had to send her 3 photographs to say, which one are you happy with? So,
Really,
I'll try to be sensitive to that.
it comes across your boldness, and presumably you found, as you visited different parts of the farm, good viewpoints, and you thought, I'd be good to go back there in the autumn or whenever.
Yeah, so absolutely. I've marked those viewpoints. Some of them I'm like, okay, sunrise in the autumn, you know, sunset in the summer. I looked at the lay of the land. I did a lot of that. I was often there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning just to get that sunrise shot, and then I'd be down at the briefing at 7 o'clock, and then I'd often go back in the evenings. There was one great time, just very, very quickly, one thing I didn't say was the manager, as I said, he used to tell me when something exciting was happening, and he said to me, Jo, we're moving the new picking platforms, they're brand new, never been used, the latest technology, from the farm right over to this field. It's going to take us a while, so we're starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I lay on the side of the road a bit like a bandit waiting for this convoy of kind of 6 platforms plus the other machinery to come by on the lane, and it just wasn't coming, and cars were starting to pass on their way to work, and I was hiding behind the hedge thinking they're going to wonder what on earth I'm doing here. And in the end I messaged him, I said, Jason, where are you? It's 7 o'clock. And he said, well, Jo, we've gone around the back roads actually to avoid causing disruption, and it's taken us a lot longer than we expected. So I shot across there in my car and got there just as Charles came over the brow of the hill, and that is the cover photograph. That is Charles Senior Gascoigne arriving with this new machine for the first time it's ever been used. Not many farms in the UK own them, and he's coming over the brow of the hill that very morning. I've rushed up there and I've got there just as he's come over, got that shot, and it's on the cover of the book. But yeah, I can't remember your question was, Jane. Sorry.
I think you've answered it.
I think you've answered it, but a great project and super images. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janie. So thank you. Good, great questions. Masain, you've got your hand up, and then we've got some in the chat line. So Masain, are you there, Masain, or have you? I'm not sure if you've frozen there.
Sorry, it's me. It's Ian Moss. Sorry, it's saying.
Oh,
Moss,
sorry.
saying it.
Moss, Ian,
I don't
Moss.
wonder who you're talking about then. Sorry. Very good, very good. No, Joe, just one question really from a learnings point of view, and it is a great project, and I've got an idea of something similar that I'd like to do. But are there any particular learnings that you want to bring out, or that you would do differently? If you, and I know you said you didn't want to do it again, but you know, would you approach it any different way than you did?
I would now be a lot bolder at the beginning. I wouldn't worry about being a news. I would still be sensitive, and I would want to build a relationship, but I think I would move in a little bit quicker to gather information, important information for the story. Definitely. And like, for example, the making of the book, do not do it the way I did it. Get a book onto Stewart's talk he's got coming up of what is it, Affinity, Stewart? What do you publish? Yeah, honestly, because I did it the way that my eldest son's partner showed me on Photoshop. It took me forever. So just make sure you use some proper publishing software if you're going to do a book. Anything else? Anything I would have done differently? I really would have moved in quicker. I've got lots of projects in my mind, and most of them aren't going to take a year. And I know I've got to move in quicker. I've got to build a relationship, but I've also got to move in quicker. Yeah. For information.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, excellent stuff.
Don't be shy. If they've given you permission, they are expecting you to take photographs and ask questions. And I think they were wondering, what on earth is Jo doing for the first 6 months? because I really wasn't asking the questions. So yeah, don't be shy.
No.
I mean, I'm naturally incredibly shy, Joe. But what I learned on the local newspaper in the first year was that if I wanted to do this, I had to look as though I belonged there.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
a facade. It's all a facade. So
That's really important.
yeah,
Yeah, you have to be confident.
yeah,
I've walked into places with my camera that I probably shouldn't have been. In London, in Trafalgar Square, I walked onto the back of the stage, past the police lady. Good evening.
yeah.
My big camera. I just pretended that that's where I was meant to be, and I got some, things like that. You have to be confident.
Documentary photographers often talk about the camera as a passport.
Yeah, definitely.
Passport into different lives, and I think that's absolutely true. So if we just go through a few of the questions in the chat line, if that's okay. So Glynis asks, how often did you go to the farm? Was it on a regular basis, or did you come and go as you wanted to?
I came and went as I wanted, but it was regular. On average, probably at least 3 times a week. It's a 20-minute drive for me. My car was continuously covered in thick mud for that year. Yeah, so 3 times a week. I would have thought, if unless I was away or working on another paid job. Sometimes if I had paid work, I remember I didn't have a lot of footage for June. I'd done a big job, big gymnastic competition, and I was slogging on that for 2 or 3 weeks. So I hardly got up to the farm.
Yeah.
That was difficult. Yeah. So yeah, regularly, as regularly as you can. Yeah.
Brilliant. In Moss, Ian refers to how you simply recorded the words spoken by the interviewees without correction or extension of a grammar correction. This gives the words greater authenticity, and I think that's absolutely right. And if anybody's interested in this type of thing, if you just look up oral history interviewing, there's a definite technique which is very different to journalistic interviewing. So oral history interviewing, and that's where really you're asking questions which allows the interviewee to answer them as they want to. Typical thing would be that if a journalist was trying to do a story on a cafe, they might say, was the coffee hot or cold? They've already framed the answer. Whereas they might say, what did you find about the cafe? And then you're going to get the real answer. So I think that comes across in the book that you really did.
Yeah, I was very aware of that. Both my daughters were gymnasts, rhythmic gymnasts at high level, and we had the BBC round, and my girls came out of those interviews just like, they just had the story already in their minds, these people that were interviewing them. It was just awful. When I interviewed Mark this year, I recorded it and I wrote it down word for word and I sent it to him, and he was like, oh gosh, Joe, can we change this and this? I said to him, Mark, you're not used to being interviewed. You're not used to watching your words. You're not used to thinking, how could this be misunderstood?
Yeah.
You haven't got anything prepared. And I gave him that time literally to go through that interview and rewrite parts of it. Towards the end, I said, no, I'm leaving that in. I want part of you. I want part of your character. I want it to be wrong in places, But yes, anything that could have been misunderstood or anything that he thought wasn't maybe quite what should be out there in the public realm, I allowed him to change, because he just wasn't used to being interviewed. And he just started talking to me. As I said, he'd known me for 2 years. Yeah. So he's talking to me as a friend, and he needed that opportunity to look at that, to look at what he'd said and rewrite it, basically. Pretty much, not totally, but he had to adjust it.
People do open up, and you just have to show you a level of responsibility to protect them, really. So that's fabulous. Thank you. Tony asks how much the book was, but he's already bought it, so he said there's no need to answer that question. Thank you, Tony. We've covered which printer you used. Yes, Steve asks an interesting question. Joe, the shots seem to be all in colour. Did you consider using monochrome to emphasise an aspect or to change the focus of view? No. I'd never consider monochrome. I love colour. I wanted my photographs to show this story in this time, in the year 2019. Yes, there's modern machinery and things, but I think that when you put things in, I haven't got anything against black and white. I can see it's
I can see its usage in lots of areas, but when you put it into black and white, you lose part of the dating of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
To me, 2019, this is a story about 2019, and if I took the colour away, I could lose a lot of the era, really. So no, I kept it. I work in colour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Lots of people saying thank you. Brian quite rightly points out that it's a really interesting, in-depth photographic, ethnographic insight into the life of a farm and captivating presentation. And that's very astute. Well done. There was one question there. Wendy asks, what's next?
I've got lots of things in my head. I've got so many. But the one I'm actually approaching somebody, my subject about now, I'm going back to that family from my associate panel from the farm, Yvonne again, her grandson. And he doesn't live with them, but he visits them regularly. And I really want to do a project on her grandson. He's about 4 years old. And you should see him on the horses and in the puddles and with the pigs and out on the shoot, and just the kind of life that maybe I kind of, as a country girl myself, that I can relate to. And I'm a little bit nervous. Obviously I've got parents' permission now. I've got grandparents' permission, but I am a little bit hesitant. I did speak to Stewart, didn't I, about how's he going to feel when he's of adult age, if he looks back at this work. I don't intend to show him in any way that's derogatory or naked or in the bath or anything stupid like that. So I am thinking of doing a photographic project, but then actually using those photographs to illustrate a children's storybook of life, of a boy, of country boy's life. It's a little bit of a statement in today's age and the way children grow up now with all their electronic things and stuck in a room unless they're at a sports class or something. But I'm not trying to have a go at that. I'm just going to show the life of a country boy and put it out there in the bookshops for parents to read with their children. That's my plan. Whether or not it will happen, but I do have their permission. I'm just arranging to meet with them to talk about. They need to know exactly what I've got in mind, because I would do it over the course of a year again, but I will only visit once or twice a month.
Oh,
that's my plan.
Fascinating. Yeah, well, I think we've answered all the questions in the chat line. Unless there's anybody else with any questions they'd like to ask verbally, or I think we can probably call it a night, pretty much dead on time, isn't it? Has anybody else got any?
Yes, Graham's put something up there on the chat. Graham, I have considered that. I'm so pleased you've said that. He says, I don't know if you've all seen it, but Graham has said perhaps give the young boy the camera and let's see it from his world. And I have thought about that. I'd need to get a small point and shoot for him, something simple, and he could keep it at Granny and Grandpa's and he can use it when he's there. I think that would be great. And
it would be really interesting. Sorry.
No, Con, you carry on.
I was just going to say it would be really interesting to see the two different perspectives.
Yeah, would it be wonderful? I think, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I've been mulling it and I haven't quite made my decision, but I think that'd be fabulous. Yeah. The reason why I think I will illustrate it is to give him that to make it anonymous, in case when he's of age he's not that happy with it. So it's a generic boy in the countryside. Yeah. Rather than
I think perhaps engaging him in the process, he might have greater sense of the personal agency in it, and therefore be unlikely to be worried about it.
Yes, that's true. I think I'm going to have to just go with it and see how it develops. Yeah, thank you, Graham. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, great suggestion. Well done.
Actually,
Well,
Joe, sorry to interrupt. Can I just say on that, if you're recording sound, the fact and record what he says, I think that just adds extra weight to it. A friend of mine did a very different project, but recorded the sound of the people. And years later to hear that child, and I've done it with my children, to hear that child's voice, I think it adds enormous weight to it, and really does. And I think perhaps for the subject himself or herself, I don't think you said, would be wonderful. So I hope you don't mind me saying.
No, wonderful. Thank you, Charles.
I think that's a great suggestion, because if you I mean, Daniel Meadows is a photographer. I really like Daniel Meadows' work, and if you look at his website, the Photo Bus, in the 70s, he was using a recorder to record his subjects' voices, and you can really see how accents have changed and how people talk and what they say. So both of those ideas from Giles and Graham have been really, really, very, very good suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe, Dave Richards here.
Hello,
I
Dave.
just don't have a question, to be fair. I'd just like to say how inspired I've been by your project. I've been in the doldrums of late, as Stuart will probably tell you, about where to go with the panel that I'm working on. And I just say thank you very much. You've really helped me on my way.
That's
And not
lovely.
only that, it's a beautiful piece of work.
Thank you very much.
And sadly, I'm going to have to leave you all.
Well, I think on that note, that was a fantastic, fantastic vote of thanks.
And of course, like Stuart, I'm very shy. Take care, everyone.
Thank
you, Dave.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
So, yeah, I think we can start to sort of wrap up, Joe. I just think it's been a fantastic evening, and I think your openness and just the way you've talked about the project, you can really tell that you kind of live that project, and it will stay with you for life. The experience of doing this, and isn't that what documentary photography is all about? So thank you very much for your time, and thank you everybody for joining us. And if we can have a sort of virtual round of applause for Joe, that would be great. If you maybe just unmute for a moment or whatever. So that's
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. It's been great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. I didn't have anything prepared. Stuart's literally done the work tonight. And I must just say, Stuart, I did send Stuart a draft of my book, and he spent a couple of hours with me, and I really appreciate that, Stuart. Thank you very much for all your help. It's been wonderful.
Very welcome, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be honest with you, in my typical style, although I'd prepared a few slides, I didn't really know what I was going to ask you tonight either. I think these sort of off-the-cuff conversations are just absolutely fantastic. So
yeah, really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining us. I hope you've really enjoyed yourselves this evening. And if I don't see you before, have a great Christmas, and we'll see you again next year. But thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you,
Stuart. Thank you, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye. Good evening. Thank you. Safe drive home. Great. Joe, if you just stay online just for a moment, if that's okay, that would be marvellous. Just how where oh, don't want to do that. Hang on a second. Oh, what have I done? I've got a fun. Oh, done. There we go. There we go. Just there we go. Probably press one button. There we go, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart. That was great. I enjoyed that. It's nice for me to talk about my work. It reinforces it to myself.